Have you been lied to about stress, and what lies have they told? What do you need to know about stress, and how can it enrich your life? Let's find out. So in this week's episode of About Mindset, with me, host Gio McNee, and I'm going to go into a little rabbit hole that I found myself in, which was, why do people have such a varying view on stress? Now, one of the things that, for any of you that know me, I'm into pushing hard and to making the most out of yourself. And one of the things that I hear a lot is people go, you should be careful, you should watch what you're doing, you should sleep more, relax more, take time off, blah, blah, blah. And it's usually to ease off and to give yourself more time. And it's never, like, I understand why people say that, which is, look, you need to back off. But it doesn't seem to sit well with me in the sense that I don't know why you would do that. And I think that it's a relationship with stress. Now, let's talk about stress, because stress is this thing that people are like, I'm so stressed, I've got so much anxiety, and it's like this overpowering thing that just prevents me from doing anything, or it makes me feel terrible. And it made me think, I wonder why that is. Why is it that someone can face a job interview, public speaking, maybe trying out a new venture or a new idea, and they get so stressed that it paralyzes them, and they end up just feeling like they're frozen? Well, that is because they have this idea that this thing called stress is bad. And it made me think, I wonder why that is. I wonder why there's some people that seem to thrive in stress, like top performers, athletes, when the pressure's at its highest, they thrive. And then you've got this huge group of people that are completely disabled with only the slightest bit of stress. And it made me wonder, it made me think, I wonder why that is, because surely you would think that if stress is what most people think it is, we would all feel it in the same way. And we don't. So imagine that you're in a stressful situation. Your palms are starting to get sweaty, your heart's starting to race, you're starting to feel the perspiration on your back, you're feeling uptight, your shoulders come up, and you're just feeling like, tense. And what's happening in your physiology? What's going on there? And your body is responding to what's happening. And it's really responding to the outside stimulation, whatever you're prepared to do. And it's getting you ready for something. And a lot of people think that is to get you away from it, or to avoid what's going on. I mean, you get people that have stress in exams, you have people that have stress the night before their first day at a job, first day at school, first day, trialing something new. They get themselves worked up. And it made me think of that expression, worrying yourself sick. I thought, wonder what that means. Because you hear it and it's like a throwaway comment, and you just think, yeah, okay, worry yourself sick sounds like you probably don't want to worry or get to that point where you're making yourself ill. Well, worrying is usually you thinking about something that isn't actually happening to you, and you're worrying about it to such an extent that it's overwhelming you. Like, your thoughts in here are creating such an environment, and you're getting such a chemical response in your body, which is stress, that stress actually starts to well up and make you feel sick. And you start to get sicker and sicker and sicker the more you do it. And we all know people that do that worry themselves sick. And you've got to say, what's the relationship between this thing called stress and why some people can actually make themselves ill? And then you've got the other side of it, you've got people who can be in stressful situations and they thrive. So what's the difference? So I started looking into this, and I found a book called The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal. And she writes a book where she had experiences with stress. Typical example, she was feeling the effects of stress. It was starting to hamper her performance. She was starting to feel terrible. She was starting to feel unwell. Stress was getting the better of her. So she recounts how she had a fear of flying and she couldn't really get on planes, and she didn't want to, like, the idea of getting on a plane was so overwhelming that she wasn't seeing her family. She wasn't traveling anywhere because this sort of idea of a flight was so overwhelming to her. And then she realised that she had to face this fear because she had to make a decision. And then she started to change her mindset where she was like, right, I know why I'm going to do this and I know what I'm going to get out the other side, so I just need to face it. And what happened then, she started to change her relationship with stress, which was she changed the idea that this thing was bad and started to look at what was good, that she was going to see her family, that she was going to be able to travel, that she wasn't limited with where she could go in the world. She could take the flights without feeling this overwhelming sensation. And if you think of things that stress you out, it might be money, it might be a job, it might be pressures, it might be deadlines, it might be relationships. You know, you think of these things and like, what is stress doing? Stress is there to prime you to do something. Right, so if you think typically, if your hands are starting to sweat and the blood is starting to pump around your muscles and your body's getting ready to take action. And one of the things that happens is the cortisol builds up in your body, and the more that builds, you want to release those chemicals because these chemicals are designed to get your response to move, to do something, to take action. Typically, what a stress outcome would be, hundreds of thousands of years ago, we're foraging in the woods and we hear we're picking berries and we're sitting there minding our own business, and then behind us a branch snaps. The branch snaps and your body springs into action because you don't know if that's a threat. So your body gets ready for fight or flight. So to take action, to fight, or to fly out the way, to get out of danger, to move. And that's what your body's essentially evolved to do. And that's that feeling that you feel with stress. So when people, it's crazy when you think about it, because what actually happens is people start to look at stress as a bad thing, but through evolution, stress has been there as a good thing to protect you, to allow you to take action, to be ready, to be primed to take action. And that's something that it seems to have been somewhere along the lines, it seems to have been muddled up. People think that stress is there to make you feel disabled, not move, not do anything, and avoid things. But if you actually look at it, stress through an evolutionary standpoint has been there for you to take action, to do something, and to actually move. And I think that's why, and why people do this is that whatever you think about, you get more of. So if you look at stress as a negative, what will be the classic signs? You'll feel overwhelmed. You'll physiologically change. So you start to feel down, you start to feel heavy, you start to feel anxious, you start to feel uptight, you start to feel, that sort of horrible feeling inside. And that response comes from your beliefs, and your beliefs are essentially your mindset, and your mindset is stronger than preferences or known facts. So even though the facts might be that the best course of action is to take action, to do something, and to face this thing head on, if your beliefs and mindset are counter to that, and that you shouldn't move and you shouldn't do anything, what does that create in the body? That creates that feeling in the body where you just feel helpless and defenseless and defeated and down, and then you just feel like a victim. Sound familiar? We see it all the time. And then let's flip onto the other side of it, because if you have the belief that stress is actually there to look out for you, then what does that look like? Well, in the example of being in the woods, you hear the branches breaking behind you. You're ready to take action. You're ready to face the threat. You're ready to run. Your blood is already pumping. Like the perspiration's already started. Your body's actually fired up to move at its maximum capacity, whether it be fight or flight. And that means that body, that response is there for you. You take other examples where you get someone that is, maybe in a high pressure job, maybe they've got high pressure demands, maybe they've got a high pressure business, and they are building up that sort of tension, that stress is building throughout the day. and maybe they're not moving much, right? But they are seeking the challenge. So what happens is they start to see the things that create the environment for them to take action. So in their daily life, they'll be like, right, this stress means that I need to do something. Something's went wrong. So rather than being paralyzed, let me face it and find out what it is that I need to do. So that might be something where they need to deal with an issue. They need to make the call. They need to reach out to someone. They need to arrange something. Maybe, you know, it's like the weird thing about stress is like, imagine that your house was on fire and you got stressed, and the typical idea of stress is, oh, I can't do anything. I'm helpless. I'm hopeless. You wouldn't sit and let your house burn. The stress response is, oh, there's something wrong. Let me get my phone and call the fire brigade, and then be on alert, be on action to go and jump into what it is that you need to do. Now, if you took that same response, which is, there is something happened, here is the response of stress, let me take that action, then you know that the thing that you need to do next is take that action. So an example would be like, for instance, in Kelly's book, she mentions the firefighters, and the firefighters were in these training examples where they were going into training high pressure situations, and they would feel their heart rate starting to rise. And one of the things that the fire brigade, the firemen were doing, was they would recognize that response of the heart rate going up, and they would say things, mantras in their mind like, I am ready, my body's responding because I am made for this. I'm made to save these lives. I'm a firefighter. I'm going to go and do what it takes. And these brave men are going into burning buildings and they're rescuing families. And that's what they're doing. They're taking, you know, cats, dogs, animals, babies out of burning buildings. And they're doing that not because they are held back by stress, but they're pushed by stress. Stress is there to give them that edge, to give them that response, to prime their body to take the action they need to save lives. Isn't that a powerful thing? And it's these sort of examples where you can apply them to anything. There's another example in the book where there was a student that was basically paralysed with the fear of tests. Like an exam would come up and they would just completely freeze. And what they were doing was, in the book, the example, what happened was they helped to explain how that student changed how they looked at it, because what was happening was, rather than saying this stress is going to hold you back or prevent you, this stress is getting you ready. This stress is making you feel that you're primed, that you're going to be more alert, more focused. Your brain's going to fire up. You're going to be ready. You're going to it's going to energize you. And the thing being is that one of the big things that happens in life is people mislabel emotions, because emotions can be very, very close. For instance, excitement can be very close to stress. Stress can be very close to anxiety. So you can feel these things and you actually are experiencing one thing and you've labelled it as another. And remember the point, your beliefs and your mindset about that belief will override actual facts. So you could be experiencing excitement, but you could really label that as stress. So, and if you have stress as a negative, and you think that stress is going to paralyse you and stress is bad, then what do? You put it off, you ignore it, you don't want to take action, and you feel let down. That's the power of not only labelling how you feel properly, because I was having a discussion before we came on air with Jill, and I was asking her about where you feel certain emotions and how you feel them. So I was doing some research yesterday, and the topic came up about different types of feelings and where you would feel them in your body and how you would feel them. And I thought I was pretty good at it until, saw a couple of the prompts, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And that I think that I need to change my perception of that, because what I thought before I listened to this was actually different. I thought differently afterwards in a powerful and positive way. And it just shows you the nuance of being able to label these emotions that you feel properly, and to empower you, to give you that sense of power, to give you that sense of being able to take action, to give you that sense of positivity. So make sure you label your emotions properly and do the audit. Ask yourself, just because you felt a certain way, you've probably heard the word, you're worrying yourself sick, or I'm getting too stressed out. You've heard someone say that, and then you've taken that in as what you should do. But there is another side of this, because there is people out there that are using stress is a powerful and positive tool. So let's look at some of the research to see what's been covered off. One of the other stories that was in Kelly's book that I thought was really quite good was a story about a woman who was looking after her very ill husband. Her husband was really ill, and she's the caretaker now. So an extremely a tragic and obviously horrible situation for them to be in. And she was just exhausted with looking after him and the stress and just feeling overwhelmed. So she visited the support group, and then the support group had helped her change her perception on what was going on, because what they were saying was the fact that you're exhausted and stressed out is just proof of how much you love your husband. So that love and care that you're giving him is so strong. That's why you feel this way, because you're prepared to do whatever it takes, and that's out of love. And it's like that switched that whole woman's thought process about it, because every time she felt exhausted, she now knew she was doing it out of love. Every time that she cared for her husband and she was doing these difficult tasks to help him, she knew that it came from a place that was powerful and positive, and that shifted, knowing that no matter how she felt, she could get through it because it was for a powerful and positive intent. And that's where you can really make a shift and change things in your life, because there's these things that, you know, you can look at and you can feel held back by. And a simple change of your perception of it and reframing it is going to make a massive difference. So I thought that was a really prominent story. Let's dig into what the studies said about it. So in a Lancet study in 2006, the US researchers discovered that high levels of stress increase the risk of death by as much as 43%, but only in people who believed stress was harmful. So let me just repeat that. In this study, they measured people that believed stress was harmful, and there was a 43% increased risk of death. However, those that reported high stress levels but didn't believe it was harmful had the lowest risk of death in all participants, leading to the conclusion of stress that is harmful when you believe it. So one study at Yale showed that people who looked positively upon stress lived 7.6 years longer. So there's an example of the difference in outcome between how you look at things. So on one side of the scale, you've got people that will increase their chance of death by looking at something negatively, in this case, the feeling of stress. And then on the other end of the scale, you've got people who believe stress can be very positive, who are actually living longer by 7.6 years because of how they have shifted the thing that they can control, which is their perception. And we cover off how to change perception, and we've done it in many, many episodes. You reframe that in your mind, and it's just the way that you change how you look at it. So these are some of the things that are powerful in the studies that are found. So you go over another couple here that just to help drive home the point of what stress can do in a powerful and positive way. So in the late 1990s, the trauma centre of a hospital in Archon, Ohio, carried out an experiment of survivors of traffic accidents and found out that they were able to accurately predict who would develop PTSD. How? So they based their predictions on urine samples collected from the survivors right after the crash. 46 of 55 patients had high levels of stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline in their urine and did not suffer from PTSD. The remaining patients with lower levels of stress hormone did develop the disorder. The experiment made powerful evidence that stress can lead to a better long-term recovery even in deeply traumatic events. So it shows that you are not necessarily locked in to stress being a bad thing, because there's people that have been in a tragic accident, a tragic event, and they go into this environment and they can have horrific injuries. They then experience the stress, but then their body excretes that because all the hormones have made the response happen, and that can help them get through it. Because one of the things that stress does is it helps you get past whatever it is that you're experiencing. Just the same way that your body's responding physiologically, that response creates a perfect environment for you to handle whatever it is that you're facing. And in these cases, tragic, accidents with a high degree of trauma, that then allows you to respond the way you need to. And then because you've went through that, you can then start to recover because your body's primed you to do what it needs to do. And having, as we mentioned in the other example, having a powerful outlook on that can determine your outcomes. So there's one more study that I think was really prominent. So there was an associate professor of child health and human rights at Harvard School of Public Health observed in Sierra Leone in 2002 that child soldiers who had been used as human shields and slaves had been, and even been forced to kill their family members, they were very resilient. Why was this? The horrors that they'd experienced in the past had allowed them to see the bigger picture when facing problems on a day-to-day basis. Many of them dreamed of becoming doctors, journalists and teachers, and even in extreme cases, past experiences of stress can endow us with strength and a positive outlook. So what they're deducing there is that because it was so bad that they faced horrendous and tragic events, they then had a perspective shift of how they seen everything else. So when the shift had happened, they would look at things that people would consider extremely stressful. And because they'd been in even more extreme environments, they just found it a breeze because they were resilient. They had built up resilience from having this stress in their life. And this is the thing that happens, because I'll give you an example. I was away recently. My good friend Thomas Martinez, a cycling tattooist. He's got a great YouTube channel, great cycling content, and he's got a fabulous event called Cycling Paradise. So I popped along before I went to Portugal and an event at the weekend. Went along to the event, and when you just sort of like, I wasn't sure if it was the weather or I felt, that I wasn't my usual self. I didn't think much of it. Still cracked out a great time. I put in a great performance and didn't think much of it. So flew out on the Tuesday, and I just was like, when you feel like something's hanging on you, you're like, yeah, maybe just need a better night's sleep. Only up early for a flight. And as the cycling event went on, I realised that there was essentially something not right with me. I was not well. And instead of just sort of easing off and be like, yeah, I need to stop what I'm doing, every day I went out and pushed and seen what I could do until eventually I was like, right, look, I need to see if I can, find something to, address this chest infection and head cold or whatever it was that I was feeling, and managed to get a doctor, went and seen the doctor, and then the next day went out and I thought, right, it's the last day, I'm going to make a go of it. I'm going to go out and get a cycle on the bike. And I was in terrible shape, but I was pushing, and some would say that wouldn't be a good idea. But, I was like, right, look, what can I do here? I can take an easy day on the bike, give it what I've got and see what's there. It would have been easy just to say no and just go, look, I'm done, and not go out. And I'm glad I did, because there was points that through that ride, especially going up the hills, and you'll check out Thomas's YouTube video if you want to check that out, where he we have a nice surprise in there to help him experience what it's like for some of the heavier cyclists like myself. So we got our own back. So go and check out that video. That'll be in the show notes if you want to go and check it out. I'd highly recommend it. It's very funny, very well put together, and it's a good one for the more kind of heavier built muscular guys. You'll thoroughly enjoy it. But back to going out that last day, there was times, especially going up the hills, I just thought, man, I could phone an Uber or book an Uber and just head back, because I felt in terrible shape. But pushing through that, because the stress in my body would have been high, pushing through that, psychologically I was getting little wins. So about 3 points in that ride, I was like, look, I'm cooked, I'm done. But I thought, let me just get to the next point. Let me just get to the next point. And then that happened 3 times, where eventually I was like, right, look, I'm going to make this. And at the end of that ride, what happens is you've embraced the stress, because the stress is there to get you to where you need to be. And sure, it can be a warning. It can be a warning to ease off and that type of thing. I totally understand that. And you should definitely listen to your body, but you should also do what you can do. And then that was an example of what I could, because I did finish that ride and I did get it done, and I'm glad that I did. And, you know, I was no worse off for doing it. In fact, I think I improved, because what it did was give me the psychological edge that, hey, look, I know that I can push through even when I'm not at my best and I don't feel great. It was, the opportunity was, I couldn't do it again tomorrow because it was the last day. So it was now or never. And then I grasped that opportunity and I pushed through to get it done. And it opens up that whole sort of, should you push or shouldn't you? And I believe that unless you're in mortal danger, I definitely think that you should push, because you should see what you've got. And that then rolls on. So I come home, I've got an event the next weekend, and it's a big event, and it's touch and go because I'm still very much unwell. And, you know, I'm like, look, I maybe need to ease off. I show up and get done what I can do throughout the week. I try and rest and recover best I can. Comes to the Saturday, and I'm feeling like I'm hacking up along. I mean, I'm literally, I've went out, rode my bike, see if I could, like, I'm trying to assess if I can do this event on the Sunday, the day before and the Saturday. And I mean, there was no Oscar performance here. I was really, really in poor shape. Even people that knew me were like, man, like, we'd never seen you like this. And they're like, should you be out here? And I'm like, well, you know, look, there's people in way worse situations than me in war-torn countries that don't have a choice. They need to get through it, and they're pushing through. And I'm like, you know, I'm going to make it. I'm going to get it done. And it's that embracing the pain and the stress that helps raise your level up. Because what happens is psychologically in here, you're like, right, look, let me face it. Let me see if I can push. So he ends up getting the ride done, goes up the next day, has a go. And I set a blistering time, had a fabulous time out. And I remember meeting my good friend Simon on the start line, and he was laughing and joking, because he's a guy that also likes to push. He embraces the stress. He likes to push himself, because when you learn to thrive in stress, what happens is you realise that discomfort that you feel is actually where you grow. You feel that you're getting better. You feel that you're improving. So you seek that discomfort. You want to get out of your comfort zone. Now, I don't recommend doing it, you know, just because you're unwell, but that was the particular circumstances. You can do it with training. And I think with most people, they get the adaptations. It's like, if you want to grow a bicep and you're like, right, look, how do I get a bicep and I want to grow it big? You need to put that muscle under stress. Same with any of your cardiovascular system, your mindset, your perception of things. You need to put stress on so that you adapt. That's how you get fit. That's how you get fast. That's how you get strong. So without the stress, you don't adapt, and without the adapt, you don't get better. So there's the pattern. To grow, you need to have stress, so you adapt, so that you grow. And then that cycle begins as you do it again and again and again. And in this case, it was a case of I wasn't in best physical shape, but I was glad that I did it, because, as I said to Simon, he's like, you're like, you know, how rough are you? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to suffer today. And I knew that I was going to suffer. And I was like, I'd be happy if I can get round. You know, I had no time in mind. I thought, if I can get round in 5 hours, I'll be delighted. I managed to get round in 4 hours and 28 over a very hilly 85-mile course. Fabulous event with the ETAP Caledonia. Had a great time, really well put on event. It was sunny and bright in the morning and absolutely freezing. So maybe the clothing choice wasn't on point, because I was dressed for more of a summer. Thankfully, it did warm up after about 40 miles, but by 40 miles, I couldn't feel my fingers. So mercifully, the sun did come out and I started to feel better. And it's the same thing like when we were during that event, because during that event, I started to get cramp. And because because I've cycled so much, I understood like my body needed more fluids, I needed more salt, and I needed to get my nutrition in. And if anybody's done any sort of endurance events, you know that you don't really want to eat when you want to drink. So you're sort of forcing it down. And rather than thinking, oh, this cramp's going to stop me from doing it, I had 45 miles left. But rather than looking at it negatively and how am I going to, finish, I was like, right, look, I know what I need to do. So let me get as much fluid in as I can. Let me keep getting it down, and let me just ease off the pedals a wee bit and just try and let my body get back into rhythm. And guess what happened? Body responded. Just started to come back to life. It started to ease up. It started to absorb the fluids and the salts. And yes, I was coming back to life. And this is the thing. It's taking yourself to that point and knowing that you can get past it, knowing that you can respond positively to it, knowing that you can get a positive outcome. These are the things, these are the reasons that you should always try and push into these environments. And stress is a prime environment where you can get growth. And that's why changing your relationship with stress is a powerful thing. And it's why you should consider if you've been lied to about stress, because stress is a powerful, useful tool. It will make your body respond in ways that you never thought possible. And there you go, end of the event, had a great time, had a great day. And I would have been really disappointed if I missed that, but I just said, look, you know, you're not in best shape, just take it off, just miss it, because I would have been really disappointed in myself. And that disappointment would have hurt a lot, because disappointment really hits home. And you know that if you feel disappointment as strongly as I do, the disappointment would have been way worse than the pain of showing up and getting it done. You know, and that's the thing about putting yourselves in those environments, because when you do, you will respond, your body will respond, and your body will adapt. So that's the power of stress, why you should consider that stress is a powerful and positive tool. I'd love to hear what things that you have been stressed about, and if you've changed, if you've managed to change your mindset and your mind frame about it, change, more importantly, your beliefs about stress, and if you've had any examples of that. And if you haven't done that yet, and you'd like me to take a look at any of the ones, in the comments section, let me know things where we can help you, point you in the right direction. So we hope you enjoyed this week's episode on Have You Been Lied To about stress, the power of it, how you can deploy it, and how you can use it for you rather than against you. We have all sorts of mindset content here. We have a mindset coaching community. If you want to get involved, hit the show notes, have a look at the show notes and click the link below. Come and visit my website. We can cover off all the things that I do in there. So we do coaching, we do mentoring, and we also do visualization tools that helps you actually visualize properly, the secrets to visualizing, why people don't get the result when they think that they're visualizing, what's the missing piece. So there's a great video series that I'm releasing that you can get involved in, where you can come and see how to visualize properly, and I will take you through the step-by-step process to make sure that you're doing it properly. And you can find out the secrets. You can understand why there's a 1% and why there's a 99%. And I'm going to, spoiler alert, the 1% tell you how to do it. So if you want to figure out what those secrets are, click the show notes, come and watch a video series. You will not be disappointed. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And from me this week, that's a wrap. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.